Hey everybody, in this video I'll be taking a look at the official FAQ and errata for the game of Stargrave. Hey everybody, I'm Alan, with Bricks and Blocks Gaming, tabletop gaming with toy bricks and blocks and helping to build your gameplay experience. Back in May of 2021, a post was made on the official Stargrave Facebook page about a short, official FAQ and errata for the game of Stargrave. At the time of this recording, that post has 315 comments of additional questions and answers from the community and from the author Joseph McCullough. However, for a while, Facebook was the only place I could find this information. But I recently realized that in December of 2021, an official document combining the originally posted FAQ and errata, along with many answers from the subsequent comments, can now be found at ospreypublishing.com. So let's get to the bricks and blocks of this document and some of my thoughts about what it contains. To start out, it lets us know that pre-measuring of distances and area is allowed. There's some clarification about the captain's starting level and how that's already figured into their stats and powers. It lets us know that each piece of basic equipment uses one gear slot, and that a captain or first mate selecting grenades can carry both fragmentation and smoke using just one total gear slot. The definition of unarmed was elaborated on, explaining that a figure needs a knife or a hand weapon to avoid being unarmed in melee combat, meaning just having a gun, like a medic or the ruffian from the bestiary, makes them unarmed in melee. It also clarifies the unarmed penalty is only applied in melee combat, not when defending against shooting attacks. It's clarified that knives cannot be added to soldiers that don't have them listed in their description. And with combat armor, the hand weapon and pistol that are built into it can be replaced with advanced versions of these, but those advanced versions take up a gear slot. So this would be the only extra gear an armored trooper could carry, for instance. Group activation is clarified as being a separate option from a standard activation. Captains and first mates can always activate with up to 3 soldiers within 3 inches. If they choose to do a standard activation, then each figure takes both actions before moving to the next figure, just like when activating soldiers in the soldier phase. If they choose a group activation, each of these figures must make their move action first, then perform their second action. So generally, a standard activation is recommended over a group activation. This clarification is in line with rulings that have been made to the same game mechanic for Frostgrave, and I'm glad that it showed up here in this document because this is a common area of confusion for a lot of players. It states that horizontal climbing works like vertical climbing, so you can't just walk normal speed horizontally across a cliff or the side of a building. You do that at half movement. Friendly figures count as obstructions, so you can't just move through them, but they can be climbed over. And all figures count as intervening terrain against line-of-sight shooting, unless the shooting figure is in base contact with the intervening figure, just like the ruling for normal terrain. It states that characters affected by camouflage or that have the Chameleon attribute can potentially be shot while they're in melee combat, with targets randomized as usual. It's clarified that grenades and flamethrowers can be fired as normal into smoke. With the stunned condition, it's clarified that it does in fact give the figure +2 to their fight against shooting attacks. The figure essentially throws themselves to the ground to seek cover. Only shooting attacks can cause stun, not melee attacks. A figure recovering from stun can use its one action to do any action they can normally do, and that if a figure is wounded and stunned, they still have one action. One thing I noticed that isn't addressed is what happens to a figure that gets stunned by a shooting attack while they're already in combat, by either a randomized shot or a grenade blast or something else. Page 60 talks about figures entering combat with stunned figures, but it never addresses what happens if the figure is stunned while they're already in combat. Loot tokens can only be picked up using a non-movement action, so typically a figure cannot unlock a data loot and pick it up on the same activation. In the Creature Actions section, it's been added that uncontrolled figures with missile weapons that can see a crew member but are out of range will move toward the closest visible target with their first action, then potentially shoot with their second action. Figures starting a battle with reduced health due to the badly wounded condition can be healed beyond their temporary starting health, up to their normal maximum health during the course of the battle, like by the heal power, for example. This document states that figures will always have line of sight with figures they're in combat with, so even if they or their target are in smoke, they can use line of sight powers on this opponent. Interestingly though, I can't find anywhere in the rules that state whether a figure is always considered to have line of sight to friendly figures that they're in contact with. So you might just want to discuss with your gaming group whether or not to allow things like the heal power to be used if either the activator or the target are currently in smoke and in base-to-base contact. The document clarifies that captains and first mates can use any number of their out-of-game powers every game, so if all your powers were out-of-game powers, you could use them all. Now looking at specific powers, the first one actually came from a question I asked, which is whether or not the break lock power allows the activator to gain possession of the physical loot as a free action like they would if they just walked up to it and unlocked it. I asked this because the one benefit of physical loot over data loot is normally if it's unlocked, it can then be picked up as a free action. But the ruling is you do not gain instant possession of it if you use the break lock power, which I guess makes sense. But this also means that even if you're standing in contact with it when you use break lock, you have to use a normal action still to pick it up. If the bribe power is used to cancel a grenade attack that would hit multiple targets, it cancels the entire attack, not just the attack against one of the affected targets. The thing that surprised me with this is that you can cancel grenade attacks with a bribe. The power states it cancels a shooting attack made by a soldier. The actual roll to throw or fire a grenade is called a shoot roll, not a shooting attack. And it's quite different than a shooting attack. There's no intervening terrain, cover, or opposing fight rule to block it. So I wouldn't normally think you could cancel it with a bribe. And the shooting attack generated by the grenade originates from the grenade, not the soldier that threw or fired it. So a question would be, do you use the bribe to block this shoot roll, or can you wait until after the opponent rolls this and then cancel the resulting shooting attacks that would be made? I believe the intent is it will cancel the shoot roll, not the resulting shooting attack the grenade generates, but I can see a different interpretation because throwing or firing a grenade is never mentioned as an attack in the rules. So discuss this with your gaming group if you plan to use bribes against grenades. It's clarified that drones, created by the drone power, are in fact robots, that they are able to pick up loot, and that self-only powers only affect the activating figure and can't be used through a drone. Holographic wall and wall of force can only make straight walls, so no circular walls to trap a figure. If a figure uses the lift power on themselves, they forfeit any remaining actions and their power move if they didn't use it before activating the power. Remote firing is clarified to generate its +3 shooting attack regardless of stats and equipment carried by the robot the power is generated from, so a robot guard dog can unleash a +3 shooting attack as a result of this ability even though it carries no ranged weapon. Rewire robot can apparently be used on a drone. I suppose this can only be done if the figure used the Mystic Trance power coupled with drone and then Rewire robot as well to have the drone as part of your team before the game. It states that if it is used this way, the rewiring is only for the one battle, even if used on an improved droid. So I would highly recommend rewiring something else. To activate target lock, a figure has to be equipped with grenades or a launcher to be the source of the target lock attack. So the captain, first mate, or nearby soldier need to be carrying the appropriate weaponry to make this power work. Toxic Claws and Void Blade can be stacked if the claws are activated first, creating a weapon, and then the blade is activated on the claws, which is pretty cool. Toxic Secretion has no effect on attacks that use a template, so no grenades or flamethrowers. However, there are some designer notes in this document that state it could be a cool idea if players decide they want to add what could be a very powerful effect. It's clarified that Mindgripper creatures do in fact have 18 armor, as a way to represent it's hard to land a hit on them due to their size and speed. And it's clarified that the exclusion of the animal trait for these creatures as well as for Warp Hounds was intentional, as they're both sentient aliens. It's clarified that Sentrbots will not make shooting attacks as a normal part of their activation, per the description of the surprise shot attribute that they have. On page 90, the mention of robot firing power should read remote firing power. And Warbots should be armed with an indestructible carbine. This is important so you know the range of their shooting attacks. But now that they have a weapon listed in their description, they're affected by the unarmed penalty in melee combat since they don't have a knife or a hand weapon, or combat armor that would have a built-in hand weapon. So, playing it according to the errata means a great strategy is to charge into melee combat with them, as they'll be reduced to +2 fight, deal -2 damage, and won't be able to activate their multiple shooting attacks ability because a figure can't shoot while in combat. Or if this seems kinda cheesy, you can do what I did in my Overgrown Factory playthrough, and just say their targeting systems allow them to shoot like normal while in combat, so they never actually suffer from being unarmed and can continue to fire on multiple targets. And lastly, the author gives some suggestions about loot placement to increase or decrease the carnage level of your battles. He mentions how allowing players to place one of their loot tokens within 12 inches of their own starting edge should increase the likelihood of each player recovering at least one loot token each battle. I've linked this official FAQ and errata document in the description box below so you can read over the whole thing yourself. But let me know in the comments below if there's any of these rulings that you found unexpected, or if there's any weird ways that you found these affect other rules in the game. I'm Alan with Bricks and Blocks Gaming. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.